We fight against the point. What's the point? Getting from under the Levite law to under the grace of the righteousness. You can't walk in righteousness if you don't know what the righteousness is or how to get from under the wickedness. You got to get yourself free, because righteousness is in the freedom itself. It's not in the oppression. The oppression and the misery is the bondage. The liberation that comes with liberating of yourself is the freedom. And that's when you start. That's why it say, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. And then it tell you that the kingdom of heaven is within you. What are they telling you? If you turn on that gold light and that silver light, and now you 5/5 realize, you know, wait a minute, this is the Levite system. This ain't nothing to do with me. I'm not a barrister. I'm not under the goy. I'm not the bondage servant that they say that I need to be under their laws that need to be governed by the barristers or the goy. The barristers are the ones, they are what you call Gentiles, commissioned by the Levites to enforce law, the system of levies and liens. They're using the Uniform Commercial Code because it's the Code of Thieves. The UCC is the entire Code of Thieves. It's the entire blueprint for taking over everybody's money on earth. It's called the Uniform Commercial Code. That is the Code of Thieves. If you don't know how to navigate it, you're going to dig yourself in so deep that they're going to bury you so far you'll never find your way back home. But it's simple. Once you become 5/5 realized, once you understood your history, you've never been a slave. You was a POW. When they did that march to divide Africa up under the orders of Enlil, when they did that march to divide Africa up, they could only do so much before a backlash or a halt to it was. You could see it when King Leopold sent Cecil Rhodes into the Congo. Because, see, they know that the Son of Man has to be crowned in the Congo. They know this. So if he got to be crowned in the Congo, they got to control that so they can stop it. Right? So King Leopold sent Cecil Rhodes down there. Cecil Rhodes unleashed a terror that make Hitler look like a gardener. But we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. Because nobody want to accept the reality that we turned our backs on the enemy and they sacked us. See, if the Son of Man didn't have to go through do all this genetic cleaning up, it would have never happened. It would have never happened. They already know. They already know. So here you go. The Son of Man going to be crowned in the Congo. They know this. They know where. And then you can see what they did to pollute it. How they spilt the blood all over the land of the people to keep the vibration low. And all that blood is part of the blood and the rights. As long as they spill that blood, they can keep the vibration low enough to run. So now, when they told us we were slaves, the plantation systems was set up. But you got to pay attention to what happened on the plantation system, and you can see the genetic cleanup at play. The plantation system, these Europeans who was put over them as overseers and slave drivers was perpetually raping women generation after generation. Their own daughters. Their daughter, granddaughter, great-grand, 4, 5 generations. But all of them at the end of what they call the emancipation looked European. Where did they go? Where did they go? After they so-called freed the so-called slaves, where did all of the quadroons and octroons that you could not distinguish their African heritage from their European heritage? Where did they go? Now you got to remember the doctrine, one drop of blood. You got to remember the motto, the great melding pot. When you put it all together, it starts making sense. So look at the movie Imitation of Life. It's showing you Mama gave birth to this octoroon baby, right? She can pass. Where'd she go? And now, go back to the photographs. Start looking at the picture of the naked people from when they started taking photographs and follow them to now. Follow them all the way up. And you'll see the bodies of the people starting to change. That's the genetic cleanup. Did somebody want me to talk about Pancho Villa? Anyway, so we going into their system deceived already. Now, this was the big plan because they knew about the genetic cleanup in play. So watch what they did. They know that if these what look like white people ever figure out that we all in slavery over here, they is too, they gonna tear this motherfucker up. I seen a show on YouTube not too long ago. This white dude said, you think they built all them prisons for black people? Black people don't have a history of rebelling against the system. They built them prisons so when these white boys rebelled. There's a white dude was talking, I was blew back because he knew what was going on. Now, in another video I had called The Conscious Community is a Problem, I told y'all it was a conscious white community as well. And they are. But what most people not realizing is when you go back and you review J.A. Rogers' Sex and Race and Nature Knows No Color Line. Now, go back and review who J.A. Rogers was. He had no degrees. He had no alphabets behind his name. He was what you call an unlettered scholar. And he give you references for everything. But he's showing you this for a reason. Now, if you look at the time frame, early 1900s, he's telling you then. Now, they told you that Barack Hussein Obama was the first black president. If you go, J.A. Rogers wrote a book called 5 Black Presidents. But that ain't got nothing to do with who our true president was, John Hanson. John Hanson was the first president of the Continental Congress, and he was what you call the blackamoor. He was the blackamoor. And he was a real good friend with one that the Moors called Ben Bay. Well, y'all know him as Benjamin Banneker, the designer of Washington, D.C. Even though he designed D.C., this is the trick about D.C. D.C. is designed to do something alchemically. So what they did when they moved the capital of what it used to be called the Northwest Trading Company, and it was the largest slave trading company out of Europe. But they was not just trading slaves. The slaves were POWs that they sacked when they launched the all-out assault on the motherland. Those were POWs. But you got to remember, they also launched that same assault on Ireland and Scotland. Right? Why did they do that? What do the word Irish mean and where does it come from? The word Irish comes from the African word Orisha. Because St. Patrick was sent in to kill off Orisha priests. Where do the Orisha priests come from? Do your history. So Benjamin Banneker was designing D.C. and when he was setting up what you call the obelisk in the layout of the land, he was performing what you call an alchemical rite. He was sealing the land. So when the apostles' time was up, they couldn't hold on. He was sealing it. But they were under the impression that he was doing a Masonic rite over there that would keep them in power. And so they helped. They participated in breaking the spell themselves by thinking they knew more than what they really did. And so this is why they tell you that the Masons often deceive their brothers, because they have to in order to make the program work. And so the Blue Lodge ain't going to tell the Red Lodge what they doing. Remember that. So the right hand ain't going to let the left hand know what it's doing, because the program has to be done. So the law you trapped in is a Judaic law. The judges are Judites, right? The system is set up by Levi. The system of levies and liens. The system of levies and liens set up by Levi is overseen by barristers, right? The barristers are a rank of royalty among the Goy, or the Gentiles, that were commissioned to enforce the system of levies and liens for the Levites. Now, if once they start to enforce it under the barristers, now they had to get it into your country. They had to get it over here in the Amur Inca. And they had to distract you from the name. Now, if you really want to know how to crack the code, look and research very in-depth the term style and title. Then look at all your war rants. And you will notice that the style and title are... They must don't want me talking to y'all. Okay, so now, the whole thing of slavery is the grand deception to keep you from realizing that if you become 5/5 realized, you have first claim of right to the physical 3/5 biological body matrix. You got first claim of rights when you 5/5 realize to the physical corpus. Having first claim of right, there's nobody other than the Christ that can assert a claim of right above you, because the Christ is the only judge of us all, right? So they don't want you to know how to get from under their system, so they try to trap you back in it by keeping you in the circle. How do they do that? They give you misinformation. They plant plants in your societies to tell you that this is how you get out of their system, but it's digging you deeper into their system because you're arguing subject matter. All right? Now, follow the trail of the barristers. There were no barristers before 1863, but we still had judicial systems. Think about that. They were called tribal courts. Go look it up. It's not a secret. They still have tribal courts. Now, they got a whole bunch of books about treaties against what they call native affairs. How did we get from 13 colonies to the entire country being overlaid by this company called Washington, D.C. or United States? Check it out. The French trying to get from... They don't want to suffer the wrath of the Son of Man. They trying to get away from this land. So they sold the rights to protect this land to England. You know it as the purchase of New Orleans, or the New Orleans Port Purchase, or the Louisiana Purchase. Now, the part that they don't tell you, that the only thing that they bought in the Louisiana Purchase is the port of New Orleans, which is a 33-mile area. That's all they bought. And by buying that, that was the military control center to protect what then was called the Western Territories, because it was everything west of the Rockies, south of the Canadian border. And it went all the way down into the northern portion of South America that the French were the protectorate of. The French sold their colonies to the Spaniards. They wanted no more parts of it because the Templar that spoke with Chief Pontiac had gave him the inside scoop on they had not caught the red-haired princess, and that the wrath of the Son of Man would not be merciful on France, Notre Dame. Pay attention. The wrath of the Son of Man would not be merciful on France. It will only be as merciful as the Queen say it shall be, Notre Dame. Now, so, in the system that they have you trapped in, it's a system of levies and liens. They have you arguing the subject matter as a sovereign. The minute you do that, you just buried yourself because you are a pirate. You are a pirate. Now, if you go and look in the legal books, look up the term despot, D-E-S-P-O-T. When you look that term up, this is what happens when somebody goes into a system like this and negotiate treaty without their tribal leader. When your tribal leader not there, you negotiated, you become what they call a despot in law. You are despotic. You are taking it upon yourself to assert your position where the chief belongs. In every country around the world follow the ancient code of kings about the despot king. The despot king, the only thing for a despot is death. That's why they consider you dead, because they know if you was 5'5" realized you wouldn't dare speak up without permission of the chief. Who would be the chief? The Son of Man. How do you know? Because it tells you in Revelations that the Queen of Heaven and Earth is going to crown him King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So if she's going to crown him King and Lord of Lords, then that would make him be the crown prince. That would give him the highest authority on the planet. Did give him the highest authority on the planet. Your tribal chieftains of all of your indigenous tribes have the most powerful piece of legislation on the world stage before them, and it's called the Indigenous Rights Act of the United Nations. Read it, study it. Stop negotiating treaty without your clan if you are Moor. If you negotiate treaty without the clan, you're a pirate, you're a despot, and you are considered dead. You are considered dead and adrift on the high seas. Go and do your research and find out what happens to the dead and adrift on the high seas. You become what you call the booty. They swoop you up into the ship, take control of that which is uncontrolled. Now, the rape campaign that went on in the plantations was part of the genetic cleanup. The freeing or the liberating of them, the allowing of them to go out in the populace, in order to make it more appealing, they had to put restrictions on it. Because we naturally, by nature, don't want to follow the law of Levi, because the law of Levi ties us back into what we call that Old Testament God, Yahweh, who is Enlil, who is what you call the devil or the prince of this, or the king of this world now. But now he got to surrender the throne. Now he got to go. And now that he got to go, he not resisting. He ready to leave. But y'all ain't ready to receive the Queen of Heaven and Earth and the Son of Man, because all of the people was confused as to what's going on right in their very face. But you think you was a slave, you was a POW. Now when you start going through what took place, it'll start making more sense. Now, you got a guy named David Walker that wrote something called David Walker's Appeal. Read it. Appeal. You appeal a court case. Think about that. David Walker's appeal. He's appealing to who? He said the freed men concerning the ones in bondage. They wasn't in on that shit, wasn't on board with it, because they wasn't following the rules. So David Walker protested. And so we call those who have positions of authority in our community that don't quite talk black enough Uncle Toms. And we get trapped up in all of these false ideologies and misnomers. The story of Uncle Tom, Uncle Tom's Cabin, y'all should read. And you'll find out that Uncle Tom was the one that set off the slave revolt. There has never been a record of a field nigger trying to overthrow a slave plantation. Every single one, Denmark Vesey, Gabriel Prosser, Nat Turner, wherever you can find one at, they was always either what you considered a house nigga or a mulatto. They was either considered a house nigga or a mulatto. Today we would say they would be a house nigga or Uncle Tom. Now, they gave us those terms to use derogatorily against one another when they see us progressing in order to keep the disunity there. But they never told you that Uncle Tom, even though he starts off smiling and jeffing, he was just trying to figure out how to get in and take the plantation over. That's all he wanted to know. So he did. And when he figured it out, he set it off. And just like that novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, Uncle Tom Set It Off, most of the people stopped reading because they got disgusted with Uncle Tom in the early chapters, and they didn't finish reading the book, so they started calling people Uncle Tom without the whole story. Now, the house nigga, as they call him, always was the ones fighting for freedom. The field nigga didn't never fight for freedom. Because he don't give a shit about doing no work. Work don't mean nothing to him. He don't like all that stuff they doing to the women and the children. But the work part was irrelevant. There's no man in Africa that has passed his rites of passage as a man that's going to sit back and refuse to work. Now, that wasn't the problem. The picking of the cotton. What they telling us was the hanging and the lynchings was to keep us from stopping them from abusing the women. It's not in our nature to allow women to be chronically abused like that. So all of the ones of us that rebelled against it, they put to death. And then they start trying to separate the wives from the youth, the age from the youth. They don't want the older ones. They don't want the 50-year-old thug that done been through it all, did his time, paid his pittance to come back and tell that 18-year-old dude, let me show you, man, how the game really go. That's part of that divide and conquer that started in Babylon that Enlil laid down. And so here we see it, that there's a whole bunch of things taking place right before our very eyes, but we don't know what they is. Why did they pass a law last year commemorating 400 years of your service in America? There was a big thing on the floor of the Senate, Congress, or whatever the hell it was, but they was talking about it, and nobody caught it. Nobody caught that Marcus Garvey said, look for me in the cyclone, and Cyclone Marcus hit in March of last year right before they did the speech. Nobody caught it. Nobody caught the king of Ghana with the collective of the chieftains apologizing for the diaspora and the loss of the war. He didn't apologize for anything got nothing to do with slavery. He said for losing a war. He said we was outgunned and outmanned and we didn't see it coming. He told you it was a war. Now, if you go now and there's another African head of state, what's that country? He over there telling them now, y'all ain't finna do it no more. Africans always had the means to stop it, but because of the cleanup necessary, they wouldn't stop it. Wakanda. That's where they cut me off yesterday. The elders did that because they didn't want me to tell y'all, go too deep into that yesterday about the Wakanda. That's not an accident. The Wakanda story not just a story. It's not an accident. And I'm not gonna get into that because I kind of touched on Black Panther in the prior video. I don't want to get off that. So now they told us we were slaves right before they implemented what you call Jim Crow. Now go to Black Labor, White Wealth, and read it. Read all of the political positions that we had, all of the strategic positions that Claude Anderson is telling us we had before the Jim Crow law. We was in Senate and Congress. We was in all of that. But then all of a sudden they started phasing us out. And we've been thinking, or led to believe, it was about our dark skin. It wasn't. They was trying to keep us permanently oppressed so they can allow those who were passing to send a wave of that one drop of blood through the European community without realizing in 2-3 generations who they are. Because that's why all of the early American records that was the most important, if you notice, all of those record houses, courts, city halls, schools, they all burned the records because they don't want people tracing their lineage and find out that there's no more white people in America that's been here over 50 years. They don't want y'all to know that. The one drop of blood, the eugenics program, the cleanup program, the gene program laid down by Ea or Enki. Enki knew what he was doing. He knew how to clean it up. He knew all they needed was that solar ray. So now, when you look at the photographs and you see the body structures change, now you have to look at your leadership. Because they've been having you believe that Dubois and Garvey are bitter enemies. And Garvey and Dubois kept it up. Why would they do that? If you're going to fight, divide, and conquer, you need a horse. You need a dog in every fight. No matter where it's at. If you're going to fight, divide, and conquer, you need a fucking dog in every fight. Hey, Goldie. If you don't have a dog in every fight, right, you automatically lost. If in one fight go, okay, so now watch this. Okay, go sit down now. It's enough. I didn't want you in this fight. If you don't have a dog in the fight, you lost. General George Patton set up something called a Black Panther Brigade. The Black Panther Brigade was one of the baddest military brigades in World War II. Now, pay attention to General Patton. Now watch what happened. He exalted these people. He told the American government, these Black Panther Brigade members are going to save this country from sure death. Right? Where did they go when the war was over? Where did they didn't go to South Central. They didn't go to LA. Where did they go? They went to Mississippi. In Mississippi, they set up something called the Black Panther Party. Well, the government had to have a contingency for that. Because if they're going to protect this country, then they got to find a way to control them. So they got to get on the inside. So now, what do? How did Huey P. and Bobby come up with the term Black Panther Party for self-defense? Ask them. Bobby will tell you. I heard about a group down in Mississippi called the Black Panther Party, and they didn't take that crap from them crackers down there. They armed up because they said they had a constitutional right to do so. So being, if you really listen and you really, really pay attention, Huey wasn't very smart. He got a whole lot of credit for doing some shit. Huey wasn't very smart. Listen to him speak. He wasn't very in-depth in his intellectual prowess. But he wasn't an idiot either. Don't get me wrong. But listen to Bobby. You hear focused, concentrated delivery. Something going on here. Now, you had to ask Bobby Seale because he was there. I wasn't. He'll tell you what went on. And he'll tell you who's who and what's what. And so, you see this Black Panthers form the Black Panther Party in Mississippi. Pretty soon then, California, the Black Panther Party for self-defense spring up. Then you had your New York party, Chicago party, producing Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. George Patton, the white man, told the white government, these Negroes gonna save the country. And we ain't watching. Okay, now, let's get away from the Black Panthers. We got to get back to Dubois and Garvey. And I'm going to show y'all something significant. When you look up the term Pan-African, you had two schools of thought. But they're going to both affirm the Pan-African concepts and ideologies. Now, one school of thought is going to say that the Pan-Africans was created by Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Another school of thought is going to say the Pan-Africans was created by Dubois. How can this, if they was bitter enemies, how are they both advocating Pan-Africanism, first of all? Second of all, if they both advocate in Pan-Africanism, how would they be able to be on the same page in secret where they can look at odds in public? Prince Hall. And I'm going to leave that at that. And I'm going to tell you more is once again, stop negotiating treaties without your tribal chief. And if y'all know Moors that's trying to assert their sovereignty without their tribal chief, they need to be aware that they're negotiating treaty without the chief. And when they do that, they become a despot, which puts them as a corpus. And when they become a corpus, they become subject to the subject matter. They become the second frame in what they call jurisdictional right. First frame being subject matter. Second frame being subject matter of the corpus. They can never take charge of what's not dead. They can never take charge of anything that's not dead. So when you go in their system and you fight their system with their system, you just submitted to their system. You argued the treaty without your tribe, without your clan, without your chieftain, without your representatives of your clan. If you look up joinder of the parties, you don't have to join the parties to the litigation. That's an issue between barristers. That's why it's in the court rule, but it's not in the compiled law or the uniform code. It's in the court rule, joinder of the parties. This is why they have to issue a war rant. They have to declare war on the sovereign individual in order to drag him in and find out if he's a living man or a dead man, if he's a corpus or non-corpus. And when they do that, they issue that war rant or they declare war on you and drug you in there. As soon as they say, are you guilty or not guilty, and you either enter a plea or let the court enter a plea of you, that's called joining the parties. As soon as they did that, you became subject to what? The subject matter. But the subject matter is a subject that's only a matter between barristers. So you got to have a barrister to represent you because you're in the arena, the court, the domain of the barrister. Arguing as a barrister. You have no standing and you have no remedy. Why are you there? Why are you under Levi? Because you haven't found the grace. That's the way out. That's the redemption at this time. Now, I'll work with anybody that want to find their way out. I don't have no problem with it. The whole thing boils down to this. You was never a slave. You was a prisoner of war. America was set up with a commander-in-chief of the armed forces of a corporation, just like Halliburton, who set up a preliminary or interim government that was ratified in Washington, D.C., but they had to move out of the capital of the true nation because that would be in conflict and they would automatically have to bow to the authority of the state. So they moved to what they call the District of Columbia in order to escape the treaty right of the people, because they are saying that all of the people fall under their jurisdiction because they all have an international bank that they allow the Pope to be the executor of. The international bank account is your Social Security account that's dispensed through the Federal Reserve System and the U.S. Treasury. They use what they call fractional reserve banking to give you a portion of your money as a stipend. But they send you to go labor, and that portion that they would normally give you, they give it to a corporation, and then the corporation give you a portion of the portion that they give you by fractional reserve labor practice calculations. So when you look into the corpus juris secundum under what a slave is, you determine a slave by the wages. You don't determine a slave by whether they're working for free or not, because it's impossible. You deserve, the slave is determined by how much of his own product returns back to him, his own labor. Your labor returns to you in the form of currency, which is actually a die marker. So this is the mark of the beast. Because you can't buy nothing without money. So if it ain't in your hand, you thinking about it. It's always in your head. 666 motherfucking 6. Mark of the beast, the money, the dollar. And you got one in every country. If you don't got the money in your hand, you got it on your mind. That's why you said you can neither buy nor sell without the mark in your hand or in your brain. So, and with that, I hope y'all learned something, and I hope I was able to contribute to y'all understanding of why we wasn't never slaves. We was prisoners of war. We lost. We got conquered in Africa, some of us. Some of us got conquered over here in the Amur Inca. You need to know where you at. The Amur Inca is called America now, but it's Amur Inca. The Afar Inca is called Africa now, but it's Afar Inca. But when you use the African tongue, it's the Zulu land, or it's the land of the Inca over there is called Aksum or Aksumi. It's indicating the people, the dark-skinned, woolly-haired people, the original people. So when you go in there talking about, I know my sovereign rights, your sovereign right is to call for your tribal chief. That's your sovereign right. Because you got to have somebody that understand that you're not under the subject matter of the barrister. You're not subject to the subject matter because you 5/5 realize you have first claim of right to the corpus. Having first claim of right, you don't submit to anybody. Because then you're a God realized. You 5/5 realize. This 5/5 realize there's only one judge over you, and that's the Christ herself. Queen of heaven and earth. That's it. No man can judge you at that point. Therefore, you cannot be under the laws of Levites, under the system of the levies and liens, under the code of thieves enforced under the Uniform Commercial Code. And so, with that, I say thank y'all for checking me out, and hopefully we can set the record straight, and everybody can see what's before their very face. All right, so I love y'all, and until we see her, all hail the Queen of heaven and earth, and I'll talk to y'all later.